There's a moment about 30 minutes into Trek to Yomi where one knew that the game preview had its hooks in me. After tragedy besets his village, our young swordsman Hiroki makes a vow to protect those who cannot protect themselves. It's at this moment that the title card slams onto the screen, and we suddenly jump cut forward years into the future to a time when Hiroki has grown into the kind of warrior who can make good on those promises. It's a moment that caps off a really effective opening chapter and highlights the absolutely stellar presentation that'll impress any fan of classic samurai films. Published by Devolver Digital, Trek to Yomi grabbed me in its trailers with its black and white visuals, but I was even more impressed after playing through the opening few hours. The grainy filter, well-placed camera angles, great use of depth of field, smart cutaways, evocative music and sound design, and even the cadence with which the voice actors deliver their lines in Japanese lend a truly impressive filmic quality to the whole thing. The opening chapters do a fantastic job of capturing the spirit of legendary director Akira Kurosawa's works like Seven Samurai, Throne of Blood, Yojimbo, Hidden Fortress, and Rashomon. From what I played, the story doesn't seem to be a huge focus of Trek to Yomi. The tale it's telling is one you're sure to have seen at some point, which isn't necessarily a bad thing and might just be evoking the wandering samurai tropes, but I wasn't particularly invested in its characters or the tale it was trying to tell by the time my preview ended. One of the most immediately striking things about Trek to Yomi is its visuals. It's presented all in black and white, recalling Kurosawa's earliest, most samurai films like Seven Samurai and Rashomon. When I first saw Trek to Yomi, my simple brain wanted it to include some sort of filter to make blood show up and look cool, as the kids say, but I realized from playing it that it's much more beautiful without. Strangely, up-close Trek to Yomi has some pretty unremarkable character models, but its clever use of camera angles and a lack of color make it beautiful. Of particular note is how it handles lighting in natural environments, such as in the game's second chapter that takes place in the forest, looking downright beautiful. You might think that the black and white style would be Trek to Yomi's signature move, but there's another trick up its sleeve: its camera angles. Levels have vintage fixed cameras, a la Resident Evil, but how Trek to Yomi frames them and gets creative with the idea is second to none. One early example is when a young Hiroki first goes to fight an invader. Instead of just showing us Hiroki's perspective, we see it from a crack in the building across from them, along with the shadows of whichever scared townspeople are watching the fight. Another example, and my favorite, can be found in the second chapter as Hiroki fights other samurai on a bridge. The camera is positioned far away from the action on a boat just down the river, and bodies start floating past as you deal with the enemies in front of you. I'm not usually one to say you should play something entirely based on visuals or art direction, but after seeing how clever some of these shots are, I'm excited to play more and see everything else it has to offer. Movement in Trek to Yomi is broken into two types. When in combat, you're locked on a 2D plane. You can press a button to change the direction you face, use light or heavy sword slashes, as well as dodge, block, and parry. You have to manage your stamina, too. Dodging, blocking, and attacking all consume it. If your stamina meter depletes, you'll become winded and have to wait for a bit to move freely again. Combat is appropriately impactful, but it feels more deliberate as opposed to immediate. You'll typically cut a foe down with 2 light slashes or 1 heavy. Armored enemies, however, take more damage and can be dispatched with finishers. When you're not fighting, movement is 3D and Hiroki can explore the areas, often finding ammunition, upgrades to stamina and health, collectibles, and shrines that grant healing and checkpoints. Optional tasks will also reward you with bonuses. Trek to Yomi is very cinematic, though, with the camera taking many variable dynamic angles that dramatically show the events during traversal. All dialogue is in Japanese to add to the game's authenticity, and the voice acting is top-notch. Trek to Yomi is seeming like a great addition to Flying Wild Hog and Devolver Digital's body of work, so I'm eager to continue my playthrough once release approaches. Cutting down enemy after enemy by making smart use of parries and quickly dispatching weaker foes with a vicious 1-2 is satisfying and visceral, and I'm very curious to see how the full game ends up upping the ante. One thing's for sure, however, things are only going to get worse for Hiroki as the bodies pile up at his feet. Combat is handled on a 2D plane, as enemies can attack from the left or right. Based on my time with the game, I'm guessing that enemies may have the ability to attack from both directions at once, though I'm hoping I'm wrong. I'll get to that in a moment. As the player, I could attack in those directions, but I could dodge, block and parry, leaving enemies open for a quick attack. Do enough damage on more significant enemies, and you can stun them, opening them up to a finishing move that looks cool and provides you with some gained health. When attacking, you can turn your back to the enemy for either attacking in the other direction or using a combo that allows you to do a rotation attack. However, I noticed that at times when I tried to switch directions quickly, there was a delay that resulted in me getting hit multiple times. That was a bit frustrating, but the only flaws I had with the combat system. There's also a stamina system, which does restrict how much you can do at once. Block or attack too much, and you'll leave yourself wide open for nasty damage. As you progress, there are constant references being made to the world of darkness and death. Given that Yomi is the Japanese word for the underworld, it's likely to assume there's more evil to the world than what exists in the mortal realm. Yet, there is a clear showcase of just how dark society can be, going so far as to destroy families and livelihoods. The presentation of Trek to Yomi is both beautiful and dismal. The black and white aesthetic enhances the grim nature of the unfolding events. In fact, the lighting and shadows in certain scenes add a dramatic flair, showing a stark contrast between hope and loss. There's no doubt that this game will pack a punch and deliver a memorable and engaging experience. Trek to Yomi is set to release this spring for the PS4, PS5, Xbox One, Xbox Series X, and PC.